Hello, everyone. My name is Raya, and first of all, let's look at this picture. Here we have a lazy koala who's wondering about going to the gym, and is not finding the motivation. I'm sure a lot of us here can relate. Unlike David, Andrea, and Doan, some days we just don't feel motivated enough. But what if I could tell you that that does not have to be the case? A lot of us know what VR is and have probably used a VR headset like that. However, with the use of haptics, a technology that allows us to integrate the sense of touch in the virtual world will allow you to actually feel weight, and maybe you can go to a virtual gym, which means even during days you don't feel the motivation, you just want to live in your room, and maybe during pandemic, you could go to the gym by just having a VR headset and a haptic glove. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mishkatulay Nanjiba. I go by Raya, and I'm from Bangladesh. And I'll be presenting my mastery project, VRTouch. So a little bit about my background. Ever since I was in 5th grade, I did a science fair in my school, which was about building a glove, a traffic LED light glove for my country, where traffic is a huge problem. So after that project, I realized how passionate I was about creating devices and about science and technology. After coming to TGS, I got to explore that passion by actually doing projects through modules and personal projects, such as my project in South Korea about drones, and then my module in Greece last year, which was about senses and using technology in senses and how can we make that more immersive for people with disabilities. And then also, I participated in several robotics Olympiads during my breaks. Last year, for example, my team made it to Panama, and in the final round, through the drone project. So let me walk you through the TGS way of doing a mastery project. So my driving question for my project was, how can I make a haptic device with my knowledge of haptics, brain-computer interface, and the human body? The credits I was receiving for my project are half in virtual reality technology and product design and development. So initially, I was really interested in the idea of VR and how I could make it accessible to people. I read a book called Phantoms in My Brain by V.S. Chandranath he was an Indian-American scientist, and I really found that book really interesting. It was about a syndrome called phantom limb syndrome, which means people, when they lose limbs, they still feel pain. And I found that really interesting, and I started empathizing with those people. So I was curious, can I create a device that will actually allow these people to not only feel the sense of touch in real world, but also in the virtual world? However, I needed to be realistic with my goals, as it was a one-year project, and I had resources that were limited based on my qualifications as well, as I'm still very young. But my narrowed down 2 goals was to create a haptic device and then be able to integrate it to VR. In TGS, when we do mastery projects, we have advanced inquiry targets. So these are the 2 advanced inquiry targets I chose. The first one was haptics, and the second one was biomedical engineering. And both of them allowed me to investigate and learn about the topics before I actually built the device. So, like I said, when I was reading that book, I found that really interesting. But when I started researching on the field and actually trying to understand how can I integrate VR and in a device such as prosthetic device for people who have lost limbs or people who have robotic arms, I realized it's a very complex issue, and a lot of works are still going on in it, and it's not that advanced yet. There's research going on, but I still try to challenge my assumptions and challenge existing limitations and just keep going. So this was my 21st century skill. So let me explain what VR is. in brief, it's a stimulated 3D environment where the users can explore and interact with the virtual surrounding with a VR headset or other technologies. And haptics is the technology that allows users to not only see, but when we integrate haptics to something, it can let us feel the sense of touch or the tactile sensation. So my device was basically a glove, which is a haptic glove. And how it works is basically it's a haptic feedback glove. So there's a lot of actuators inside the glove that allows you to feel pressure, temperature, and texture, and sometimes weight, like in the VR gym. So here's a demonstration of what it looks like from the inside. There's a lot of mechanisms, a lot of devices inside, but and mainly they're actuators that function, and it's coded, pre-coded, and it's connected to your VR headset. So when you, for example, you want to play a video game and you wear a haptic glove, you can not only see in VR, but actually touch the things, and you're using your hands instead of the VR thing. So you can actually touch it with your hand, which is pretty cool, I think. So something that I did, and I'm really glad I did, shout out to Sophie. My research was on the same thing as my mastery, so I got to look into the academic side of it and see what kind of works are done. I read over 50 papers, and which some of them were given to me by Kenzie, and some of them I just found through my investigation in Google Scholar, and this is the paper I wrote, which helped me understand a lot more about my topic. So, this is me in Japan trying to solder the parts of my project. I had a long list of things I had to buy, and then once they were there, I had to actually build a device, and there were a lot of challenges. First of all, the biggest challenge I faced was soldering. Because it's a really small, the green potentiometers, so they just kept coming off, and I had to redo it several times with a smile because I was so passionate about it, and which is when I realized how much I value my core values. I think my two most important core values from the TGS core values is greed and meraki. Meraki is the Greek word for pouring all of yourself into something that you really love doing. So Kenzie told me later on that no matter how many times the glove would break, she knew I'd feel frustrated, but I would keep making it and rebuild it. So yeah, I finally managed to have my 5 haptic modules for one glove, which goes in each finger. So this was a prototype and built on existing gloves built by other people. One being Lucas VR, someone I really love to watch on YouTube. He's really cool. But mine was a bit different. Okay, so these are my 2 prototypes. That one was after, in the term before Japan, the break after Australia, and this is my final prototype that will go on top of the glove. So, what is the future of my project? First of all, like in the beginning I mentioned, I was really interested in learning more about people with hand-related disabilities, so I was thinking I wanted to build a device that will go on top of a prosthetic arm or a robotic arm that people with lost limbs, especially for hands, have, so that they can actually feel the sense of touch in VR. But due to my limited qualifications, as I'm still in high school, I didn't really get to do that, but I explored the possibilities, and I created plans for what I might be willing to do in the future, which leads me to what I'm going to study in college. I'm studying biomedical engineering at the University of Rochester, so I hope to do more research on this and actually create something, inshallah, someday. Okay, thank you. So these are my project mentors who are really supportive, and I couldn't thank enough. Kenzie from TGS, And then Ross was an external mentor from an organization called Polygens. He's doing research on something similar. He's a PhD student at Berkeley. So yeah, I'd like to give a huge shout out to these people for always being there for me and supporting me throughout my journey. Finally, I'd like to invite you to my booth if you want to see my glove in progress. Thank you so much.